Welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop March 2020 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? But first, I want to take a moment and ask a more important question. How are you? How are those around you? I hope keeping sane. And if the answer is uncertain, I know I've answered like that a few times. Well, maybe, just maybe, this month's Pit Stop will be your 30-minute respite. Maybe you're out for a keeping 6 feet from others type walk around your neighborhood and listening right now. I know I've recently found solace with pod walks, entertainment, and video chats for work and life. This month, I talked with Matt Mooty, senior software engineer who works on multilingual support within the SharePoint-powered intelligent intranet. Matt and I talk about designs of the past, SharePoint variations, and how the team has moved forward with a modern design that solved past problems and opened up new opportunities globally with distributed companies all around the world, and all of those problems and issues that they face with, of course, multiple languages. Consider this the message center for everyone. This is your place, your time to stay informed, current, and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. I'm recording today from partly rainy, partly sunny Sammamish, Washington. So let's jump in. First, let's start with features around employee engagement, all those things that you do one-to-many to broadcast information and news throughout your organization. First is what we're going to talk about with Matt later with the behind the scenes. But to give a little bit of context of what multilingual publishing for pages and news is, we'll talk about it a little bit here. Organizations with diverse users benefit from having content throughout their intranet, available, of course, in multiple languages. With this new feature, site owners can extend inclusive experiences within SharePoint communication sites for their globally diverse workforce. Site owners will see a new language settings under Site Settings that once set Enable translation of pages and news. They will also be able to assign individuals as translators per language. Translators get notified via email when they're in a new default language page is created or when an existing one is updated by the original content author. Translators are responsible for adding their language's content. People visiting the site will automatically see pages and news in their preferred language when available. One small note, this feature is shipped off by default. Site owners are the ones that need to take action to enable this feature. Sticking with publishing, there are now new publishing commands that have been added to the SharePoint Pages library. You'll see them show up in the command bar at the top of the library or within the file card that appears when you hover over a page's title in the Pages library. There will be visual cues that a file has changed, either content or metadata, and any related messaging with the call to action to publish or republish the page. This makes things a lot more visual and possible to take multiple actions across numerous pages directly from the SharePoint Pages library. On the recipient's end, the next feature is about the SharePoint mobile app and how it will adhere now to the customized tenant themes and branding. Admins can configure the various options from within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and from here they can assert things like a logo image, navigation bar color, text and icon color, and accent color. Once set, the SharePoint mobile app per each of your users within that tenant will be seeing more adherence to the company theme and brand. This soon applies both to the iOS and Android versions of the SharePoint mobile app. Lots of great documentation here for admins and how to set it up, and of course, a great new experience for your end users when they use the SharePoint mobile app. One feature that we've talked about previously has just gotten an update. The SharePoint root site swap feature that we've recently released is now no longer restricted to customers with 10,000 or more users, otherwise known as It's Now Available to Everyone. A quick review, we've enabled the ability to swap the location of a SharePoint root site with another site. Most often this is a communication site, and you do this by using a PowerShell commandlet called invoke-spo site swap. So swap away, do it today, invoke SPO site swap, and do not delay. Again, lots of documentation on how to do this. Grab your local PowerShell and off you go. And finally, I'm pleased to highlight wiki notation for page links. You can add links even faster within the text web part of your pages and news. You just type bracket bracket where you want a link to appear, and you'll be able to select from a list of pages on your site. Or you can enter a link by typing bracket bracket your link name, pipe, and then the URL and end bracket bracket. We know this is one people have been looking forward to do, and I say, what's all the bracket? Now, there are multiple ways to add a hyperlink to your pages and news posts. Again, there's an article to learn more about working with the text web part, which now includes linking to other SharePoint content like pages and news. So let's take a pause and now hear from Matt Mooty, Senior Software Engineer, to describe a little bit more about the planning and the strategy behind multilingual support throughout the SharePoint-powered intelligent intranet. All right, so we are now going to turn to learn a little bit more behind the scenes and a little bit more about the actual feature around multilingual. And to do that, we're going to talk with Matt Mooty, who is a senior software engineer on the SharePoint team here at Microsoft. And he's focused on multilingual, the support for it throughout the SharePoint-powered intelligent intranet. Matt, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark.
I appreciate you taking the time. I know we both are at our homes coming through to each other on this Teams call, and hopefully that will be good quality. We can take out this information out to the world. To start, though, let's talk about who is Matt and your journey to get to where you are in Microsoft.
Sure thing. I started in 2011 right out of Carnegie Mellon, and I've been working here in SharePoint the whole time through there. I've had a surprising variety of projects in that time that's been a lot of fun. And I think some of the highlights that people have probably heard about are the site page content type. I did a lot of work on that when we were just creating that communication site template and the code to create the communication site, and porting site pages over to SharePoint Server 2019. And then my latest project is, of course, multilingual pages within the SharePoint intranet.
So you have a lot of obviously the new plumbing for the communication sites and the value of knowing both the cloud and on premises. If you're taking a lot of what we first put in the cloud and then adding that into the SharePoint Server 2019 code base, that's a pretty big stretch across on premises to the cloud. Just in terms of the intelligent intranet, we think about that in hybrid mode as well. What are some of those base elements when you think about comm sites, when you think about whether they run in the cloud or on premises? And of course, where does that lead to this planning and bringing to fruition multilingual? What is the approach and philosophy behind all that?
Given all of the experience that we've had with site pages and communication sites, both in on-prem and online, I know that some of the most important things to keep in mind are that we need to keep it simple, and we need to make sure that what we create fits naturally with the rest of the SharePoint product. And another thing that I and the rest of the feature crew wanted to focus on was gathering specific customer requirements so that we know what it's going to take for the customers to be successful in creating a multilingual intranet.
I have to ask the obvious question. Did you speak to any of the customers in a different language, or were you always multilingual through English?
So I myself speak a little bit of French. I can't say that I held any kind of long conversation, though. We do have several members of the team that speak multiple languages. They aren't here today, but we definitely took their feedback throughout the process. And we have a large, diverse team within SharePoint where we're able to collect a lot of feedback.
I can imagine the French or any language, just understanding that there's a different approach to each language, and of course, the technical requirements, which we'll get into. But I think the value of understanding that throughout a company, especially a globally diverse company, there is a diversity of languages. Obviously, the way that you've been building the intranet beyond languages is there's a diverse set of capabilities people require. There's a diverse set of devices that people are coming in with. And of course, the variety of content, everything you do with pages, web parts, and how people can arrange those things. Before we get into multilingual, and whether you answer this in English or French is completely up to you, But if you think about what part of the intranet, where does that fall for multilingual, at least where we get started? Is that throughout the intranet or more at the top of the intranet?
So we're aiming this really at the top level intranet. At least at the initial offering, we're going to collect feedback before we go all the way up and down the experience, though.
Gotcha. So pretty much for us, that means it targets comm sites where people will be building employee engagement type landing pages and, of course, broad information distribution. We'll talk about futures in a little bit. So let's bring it down then to the level of you're on a comm site. What is new for now customers who are going to take advantage of multilingual and maybe just that little history of we've had variations in the past and what are we doing differently? We don't want to equate the two, but I'd love to hear your thoughts from the engineering perspective when planning for multilingual, where it is that people will be using it and how, but also, where we've learned from the past and what we've done differently.
Of course. So variations at a super duper high level is really creating a copy of a web for each variation. You can think of them as for each language, and then keeping them in sync through a rather complex mechanism. We wanted to keep a simpler, more predictable approach for multilingual pages so that customers wouldn't have to try to understand this black box kind of thing. So one of the biggest decisions we had to make early on in the feature was how do we represent the data in multiple languages in a way that fits into SharePoint and doesn't cause friction with the wide-ranging ecosystem of features within the internet that we want to work with. Features such as search, approvals, scheduling, and version history, they're all very important that customers can understand how that works intuitively with multilingual pages. And so the approach that we took was to go with multiple list items within a single web, where a single page will have there'll actually be multiple pages, loosely tied to each other, representing the various languages, the various translations of that original page. And this provides a more natural way you can control the destiny of the page in features like approval, scheduling. You can see the version history for a single language easily because it is, at the end of the day, just another page. And also you can search for each of the various languages of the page as well, because again, it fits naturally into those features.
So from the past, you've mentioned that you moved away from the multi-site model and started to adapt more of what we've learned and built on top of lists and, of course, page libraries. And I'm sure you've taken it even further beyond that. When you get to the point of the feature set and the different roles of what people will be doing to establish new and different pages with different languages, and of course the end user experience once those pages are in place, can you talk about those two roles, the person who sets up a page to translate it and then the consumption model that you've set where end users, what's that experience? Just to talk through the feature a little bit.
Oh, of course, yeah. So I think there's maybe even four roles that I think are relevant to this feature. There's the site collection administrator, and they're going to be the ones to choose which languages to enable for this site. And that's an important decision to make because this is going to require manual translation for pages, at least in the current version. And so it's going to require some business process on the part of the customer to get those pages translated. And they also get to choose which people get notifications automatically through our new feature to tell them when, for example, an author requests translation or when an original language page is updated and may require an update to the translations. From the page author's perspective, they actually don't have to do a whole lot of work. They don't have to worry about which languages necessarily or who's translating what. They'll see a new button in the command bar that says translations. And that'll open up a panel and they can just say create for all languages. And then all the languages that have been enabled by the site administrator will get translations created for them, which would then be manually translated by the translators at the company and then published as that business prefers. We wanted to give customers a lot of power over how exactly they publish all these translations. Some people might want to publish the original language first. Others might want to publish them all at the same time. They have that ability. And then for the viewer, the experience should be pretty seamless. They get automatically redirected when they get sent to the original language page to the translation corresponding to their language preference. Now, if for some reason they want to view the page in a different language than their language preference, or if perhaps they don't have a translation in their language preference, then they can use a new language selector dropdown that's in the top right of the page that allows them to choose between the various translations for that page.
So there's both process in creating the pages, notifications and awareness for people that are going to be translating, and then either a default experience if somebody's chosen their language or somebody can switch to it. I think there's actually a fifth role, and I'm just going to plug this as maybe a feature that you put in there. Anybody who clicks translation button into French actually sends a job ticket to your inbox and can have that full page translated by Matt Mooty himself.
Oh, so sorry. I'm not going to be able to take requests of that sort at this time.
All right. Well, okay. So maybe that one won't make the roadmap, but let's turn a little bit to talk about futures and continued investments in this space. This is really more of a recap of anything that we've disclosed publicly already. But as you start to roll out this feature, really within this first week is when we're talking. Where do you see this going in terms of future investments or rounding out the full intranet when it comes to multilingual?
We started out this project really focused on customer feedback, and I think that's how we're deciding what to do next as well. So far, we've done multiple surveys, customer sessions at the various conferences over the last year, and we've done user studies. All of this is to try and make sure that we make the right investment. And based on that kind of feedback, the two next things that we're currently focused on that I think we've already talked about publicly are automatic translations. We're still trying to figure out exactly how to get that right. The second thing, as well, based on feedback from our customers, would be an improved multilingual nav editing experience. Right now, it's possible to set up a multilingual nav on the site, but we think that the experience could probably be a little bit more fluid than what it currently is. So we're working on making sure that it's easy for site authors and site administrators to manage their nav.
I think that's great. I know a closely related feature certainly will work from is the concept around audience targeting in navigation. I know we have that on the roadmap. And I can imagine targeting both people by audience and language, or at least having that capability in the future will be critical to how people roll out, especially in a globally distributed employee base.
Absolutely. And I've been working with the audience targeting team. Back when we sat in the office, they sat across the hall from me. So we've been in close contact with them. And we've also been making sure that what we're working on in this area will work for the hub nav and the footer as well. I know those are very related to the nav.
Yeah, I can imagine somebody who's listening to this podcast and has seen the news either from the SharePoint conference last year or Ignite last year, and they see a lot of the investments we've made in what for a long time we talked about as the modern intranet, now the intelligent intranet with AI and a lot of the investments around automating a lot of the experience, or at least making it easier for people to establish an intranet in SharePoint, in Microsoft 365. And from what I'm hearing you say, the expectation will be anywhere that there isn't a part of the text or the user interface that Microsoft manages out of the box with like drop downs and site settings and some behind the scenes things, wherever there is customer driven text, is an opportunity for these multilingual investments. And of course, we're just getting started.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So where can people go to find out more about what you and your team are doing? I imagine that there's some new support assets and maybe some people to keep an eye on. Where would people go to find out more?
So if somebody wants to find out more about this feature, we made a short link so that people can get to it pretty easily. It's spo.ms/MLP, stands for multilingual pages. Again, that's spo.ms/MLP. And then if you do have any questions or feedback for the team, my teammate DC Padur is most active on Twitter, and you can reach him at his Twitter handle of DCPadur, which is DCPADUR. That's a great way to get a hold of us.
That's great. We, of course, know DC from a previous episode where we learned more about SharePoint home sites and, of course, his investments time-wise working with you all to make the intranet great for all of our customers. So we'll definitely point a link to DC's Twitter handle and the new link that you provided, which I will just tell everybody goes to a new support article that's titled Create Multilingual Communication Sites, Pages, and News, which you can infer means you can, of course, translate a lot of the content in your communication sites. Matt, I want to thank you for your time today. And of course, most importantly, thank you for your time building this feature, learning from the past, listening to our customers, and bringing the entire intranet forward into the future. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And I got to say, it's been a lot of fun working on this feature and just really understanding what customers need for this. It's been a blast.
That's great to hear. I also want to tell you, stay safe. I hope to see you in person soon, but for now, teams, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we will move on to talk a little bit more about teamwork. Now you should be a little bit more up to speed on what went into making multilingual, at least where we're getting started with multilingual throughout the intelligent intranet. It's always great to hear from our engineers and what they're thinking, how they're planning, of course, how they're taking feedback to make the feature as best as it can and have a really great maturity curve over time, continuing to take that feedback. Let's now move into teamwork. All those things that you do in the context of either a team site, working with pages, working with lists, and how we integrate with Microsoft Teams. The first item in teamwork that I want to share is the SharePoint Pages and Lists app for Teams has been redesigned, plus there's a new standalone SharePoint Pages app. When you go into Teams, you'll see both app choices when you click the plus button in a Teams channel to add new content. Using the original SharePoint app, your members and owners can now create a tab in their Teams channel that makes a page or list from any SharePoint team site visible and usable within Teams. In addition, your people can now use the SharePoint Pages app to easily find pages and news posts. They can also use this app to tab pages or news posts from any SharePoint team site by pasting a link URL. Note this feature has no impact on page or list permissions. Users who did not have access to a page before it, when it was added as a tab, will continue to be unable to access the team in terms of whatever governance plan you've put in place. And a reminder, when you add content like this in Teams, it's just a reference to the content where it lives. It's not a copy. Our focus is to make it appear in full fidelity and be as feature-rich as possible. A lot of great documentation on how to work with tabs in Teams, which now includes a new, rich experience for adding pages and lists. Next up is from a web parts perspective. You can now edit metadata from within the SharePoint document library and list view web parts. People will soon be able to open and edit files or list items, their properties directly from the document or list view web parts. They no longer need to navigate to the actual list or document library to update anything. Just click the info or more under item properties wherever the web part has been added. Done. Easy. Just make the change right there. There's a lot of great work going into whenever you're working with document libraries or lists throughout Microsoft 365, especially when you're working with web parts, to make it a consistent and feature-rich experience as if you're working on the list or document library natively. And last for teamwork, SharePoint lists now have a conditional formatting rule builder with new rich text capabilities. People have the ability to use if-then logic to format rows and columns based on attributes like numerical, date, etc., to apply color formatting across SharePoint lists and libraries. You can add several variable conditions so the data does or does not get formatted based on the rules you've defined. The result is an experience that calls to attention specific data, missing data, or recent changes to the data. You too will have greater flexibility for how your text appears within your items by using the enhanced rich text editor so you can bold, color, underline, etc. more closely to how you wish your text to appear. Great new feature so that you can get a better visual on what's going on with your list, especially when things change. So let's move the conversation to related technology. And of course, we're going to start with singing happy birthday to Microsoft Teams, who recently turned 3. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, Teams. Happy birthday to you. Now, a personal note here, with both of my kids, we called this the Thunderous Threes. Sorry, Cash Kids. Maybe for Teams, though, let's call it the Tremendous Threes. Aren't toddlers just fantastic? The good news, though, is that the Teams team published a huge 3rd anniversary What's New in Microsoft Teams blog. And a few of the feature highlights are that you can now virtually raise your hand in meetings when you have something to say. You can pop out chats for ease of keeping focus on one thing as you navigate to another. You can easily conduct interviews, virtual healthcare visits, and more with the Bookings app in Teams. They've made it possible to reduce background noise in Teams meetings in real time with noise suppression. A couple nice physical things that you can use with Teams. There's now a certified Bose headset, the NC700, and a RealWear incorporated headset that makes it so you can do things hands-free while on site. There's a lot more detail in the What's New in Microsoft Teams 3rd Anniversary Edition. This is a blog post by my peer, Marissa Salazar. Next, we want to highlight that you can put stream videos in Power Apps and Microsoft Forms. Your company's favorite Power Apps for travel, training, and more can now support stream videos. Bring all of your company videos into custom productivity apps to improve engagement and knowledge retention. This is another great maker feature to extend the art of the possible, the art of engaging multiple media experiences. Last, for related technology, now Yammer community admins can schedule, produce, and broadcast a live event in just a few clicks. Attendees can access the event page in Yammer and participate in open discussions before, during, and after the event. Presenters can monitor the conversations happening in Yammer without having to leave Microsoft Teams. There are a number of Yammer integrations with Teams, like adding a Yammer community as a tab in Teams. And the real design value is how the technology is taking a scenario-first approach to keep you from bouncing through various apps and experiences, and rather opting to keep you where you are, where you started from, with intuitive options to accomplish numerous tasks. There's a lot of great innovations going on with a lot of different technologies in Teams, and Yammer and Teams, the engineering teams behind the efforts, have been doing a really great job to keep up with what's necessary in the technology that we're making available, but also listening to customer responses so that it gets more refined and it's a better experience. So that's it with related technology. Now let's move to teasers. I know you're on the edge of your seat for what's coming. In fact, I'm going to move to the edge of my seat. Let's dive into 2 teasers for next month, April 2020. Teaser number 1, audience targeting in site, footer, and hub navigation, continuing the spread of how you can manage and target your audiences throughout the intelligent intranet. Teaser number 2, shareable address bar links. That's it. That's it with the teasers. We'll share a ton more within the full Roadmap Pitstop April 2020 edition next month. Let's dive into a few resources. We've added a list of important resource links in the show notes and in the corresponding blog post on the Microsoft Tech community. These resources will help assist you in learning more about key help articles, info on the Microsoft 365 public roadmap, recent SharePoint and OneDrive community blogs, and all things Twitter, all the places you need to get up to speed and to stay ahead. But let's put a little plug in for what you might be doing these days, which is just a few things around the house. I know I've been doing a few more things around the house, both work and life. And if you made it this far, I thought I'd put in a little life living plug for a few things I've latched onto for entertainment during the current crisis, as you, like me, might be doing a few more things at home these days. Of course, you can work from home, but don't forget, you can home from work just the same. First thing I wanted to share are some movies and series that I've recently consumed and would recommend. First one, The Outsider. This is a 10-episode series, and it gets a little bit of a itch on the back of your neck, as only Stephen King can do. Some sci-fi with Altered Carbon Season 2. Maybe I've re-sleeved and you don't even know it. Maybe I'm Takeshi Kovacs. And balanced with that, there's a comic brilliance with a new series called Avenue 5. And this is from the same minds behind Veep, and it got renewed for a second season, so can't wait and look forward to that. Next, for a little bit of background music suggestion. This is for both work and life, when it's your turn to control the tunes in the house. I've been turning to David Bowie's Serious Moonlight Tour. This was a live recording from 1983 that was recently remastered, and it includes a wonderful rendition of Space Odyssey. And I feel like I'm Major Tom. I'm absolutely not forgetting to take my protein pills and put my helmet on, but add to that, don't forget to wash your hands. I bet space soap is really amazing. And for that spontaneous dance party in the kitchen, let me recommend pretty much anything from LCD Sound System. My favorite song these days is All My Friends. I think you'll like it too. And last, in the evening hours, I'm determined to finish a random paperback book that I grabbed when I was traveling in New Mexico last month. I grabbed it from the back of the shelves in a bookstore called the Black Cat Books and Coffee. This was in Truth or Consequences. And the title of Zane Grey's book is Wilderness Trek. This was published in 1944. It's a story about two American cowpokes who sign up to drive a herd of cattle across 3,000 miles of rough Australian bush country. To what I say, yeah! Whether you pick up that book or just grab a great book, let me know what you're interested in, what books, what movies, activities, what are those things that are help keeping you both connected and sane. Just let me know on Twitter. I'd love to know what you all are watching, listening to, and reading. We hope you've enjoyed this nice, smooth ride through the pit stop. Stay engaged, wash your hands, and ask questions. We're here to put our and your best change management foot forward. Till next month, thanks for tuning in.